Video games are getting big. Some might say too big. The idea of doing everything in a game is becoming increasingly improbable. And as games evolve to respond as much to your actions as to formal outline choices, this trend is going to increase exponentially. As you grow up, of course, and free time becomes increasingly more and more precious, it's no surprise that a bunch of great side quests get missed. But don't worry, we're here for you. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are the 10 best video game side quests nobody played. Number 10, They Won't Go When I Go, Cyberpunk 2077. Games can often be at their best when they don't broadcast choices, such as the case with this side quest in Cyberpunk 2077, which can only be accessed based on your actions. If you're playing thoroughly, you'll eventually receive a call from one of your mercenary handlers, Wakako, directing you to a client who wants revenge on Joshua Stevenson, the man who killed his wife. Ambushing him and 2 cohorts in a vehicle, your client will lose his cool and attempt the hit himself. At this point, it'd make sense to jump in and save him, as he's paying you. However, if you allow him to be shot and killed, Joshua will invite you to join him on a sort of pilgrimage, where he attempts to make amends for one of his former victims, culminating in a penance. By simply sticking by his side throughout his journey, you'll eventually be called to the event in question, a live crucifixion of Joshua, which you can perform yourself. It's a pretty dark and gnarly ride, and it's largely out of your hands. In this moment, you're a spectator to someone else's big moral choices, rather than being the one making them. Number 9, FROSTFLOW Abyss, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. With its many re-releases, Bethesda's The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim continues to entice new and returning players alike. This makes sense considering its breadth of content, most of which can only be found through very thorough exploration, such as the case with the FROSTFLOW Lighthouse and its associated quest, FROSTFLOW Abyss. The lighthouse itself is located in the middle of nowhere, near the northernmost boundary of the map, a little ways east of Dawnstar. Inside, you'll begin uncovering the sad story of the family who operated the lighthouse, first by discovering the dead body of its matriarch Ramati, laid out next to a dead chorus, giant insects that serve the hostile and terrifying mutant farmer elves. Continuing to the basement and the tunnels it connects to, you'll fight more chorus and farmer as you discover the bodies of the rest of the family one by one. The quest will culminate in a fight against a massive chorus reaper and the discovery of the family's patriarch, Harpt, also dead. Along the way, you'll find some high-quality loot and tons of alchemy ingredients, making this quest well worth your while, as well as a permanent buff to healing should you fulfill Harp's dying wish. Number 8, Mission VAO'S Brother, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. BioWare's classic RPG, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, has a number of missable side quests. Between the game's opening and finale, the order in which you progress through its many locations is up to you. However, this one requires an almost precognitive level of specificity. Mission VAO is one of the earliest companions you meet in KOTOR, a scrappy young Twi'lek who grew up on the streets of Taris. She also has a long-lost brother Griff, who left her there when she was little. To trigger the quest to find him, you need to embark on a planet that isn't Tatooine, with Mission in your party, and hope you run into Lena, Griff's ex-girlfriend. She'll tell you he's on Tatooine, working for the Zerka Corporation. Head to Tatooine, where a Zerka employee will tell you he was captured by the Sand People. Upon reaching the Sand People Enclave, you can then barter for Griff's freedom. The big challenge here is expecting for any of this to happen in the right order, especially if you, like me, weren't a big fan of taking Mission out at all. The upshot is that if you go to Tatooine before meeting Lena, Griff will never spawn in, thus making the quest impossible. Number 7, Here There Be Monsters, Fallout 4. Bethesda games are packed to the brim with hidden bits and bobs, but still, Here There Be Monsters, a side quest in Fallout 4, requires so much luck to find on your own that there are still people who haven't played it. Begin by speaking to Donnie Kowalski, a kid who hangs out behind the Shamrock Tap House in Boston Harbor. Your best bet at even finding this place, if you aren't just exploring, is to be directed here by one of the game's many Radiant quests, those being randomized generic quests given by NPCs that can potentially take you just about anywhere. Donnie will be out back staring out over the harbor, where he says he's seen a sea monster popping its eye stalk out of the water. However, a closer look reveals that this is actually the periscope of a submarine, specifically the Chinese submarine that launched its nukes on Boston at the start of the game. Inside, you'll find the captain, a ghoul named Zhao, who's been stranded in the powerless sub. Should you choose to help make the vessel seaworthy again, you can be rewarded with the unique weapon, Zhao's sword. However, it's a lengthy and dangerous mission to undertake. Number 6, Cave of Dreams, The Witcher 3. CD Projekt RED's The Witcher 3 is, to put it lightly, really big. Featuring multiple open-world regions, the game touts an embarrassment of content in the form of quests and locations. If you want to do everything in this game, you basically have to comb the huge maps, and even then, some of them can only be done during a narrow window. Such is the case with the side quest, Cave of Dreams. In order to trigger this quest, you need to first accept the contract on the Phantom of Elberg, a ghost plaguing a small village of little note. But you must do so in between the main quest, The King is Dead, Long Live the King, and the side quest, King's Gambit. This will unlock the quest, Stranger in a Strange Land, during which you'll be imprisoned and presented before the local ruler, Madman Lugos. Lugos will ask you to find his son Blue Boy, who's leading an expedition into the Cave of Dreams. What follows is a mushroom-fueled psychedelic odyssey through the nightmares of each man in your party, including Geralt's, a premature fight against the game's final boss, the King of the Wild Hunt. Number 5. The EPSILON Cult Missions, Grand Theft Auto 5. Grand Theft Auto 5's fictional take on Los Angeles, Los Santos, never lacks for things to do. Rockstar's packed so much content into the city and its surrounding environments that you're never left wanting for activities. Between story missions spread across 3 different protagonists to the varying random encounters, you can easily overlook some of the game's finer details, like its robust internet. Surfing the web is the only way to begin this chain of side missions, as the first thing you need to do to trigger them is to answer a questionnaire on the official website of the EPSILON cult, an obvious parody of Scientology. Soon after, the cult will begin soliciting you for donations. Even for players who've completed the questionnaire, this is the point where most abandon the quest line. Or if not here, then at any point later in the 8-stage chain of missions. Some of the most tedious missions in the entire franchise that demand increasingly exorbitant donations to progress. The eventful payoff is significant, and the donation-based progression is in itself a funny way to satirize Scientology's real-life donation-based hierarchy. However, for such a relatively insignificant part of the game, it demands a lot from the player to stick it out. Number 4. Reuniting the NERO family, Final Fantasy IX. One of the best kept secrets in gaming is found in Square Enix's Final Fantasy IX, released in 2000. It revolves around identical triplets, Panero, Gennaro, and Zenero, members of Tantalus, the band of thieves to which protagonist Zidane belongs. Outside of an optional minigame, they don't do much, but they do have one curious line about their missing family. For a whopping 13 years, no one imagined that a line amounted to anything, except at most a cut side quest. But as a Game FAQs user discovered in 2013, you can actually reunite the so-called NERO family through a series of extremely specific and unlikely actions. After reaching the game's final dungeon, Memoria, the player must exit the dungeon after any boss fight or cutscene and return to the Tantalus hideout, where the NEROs will reunite one after another, up to a maximum of 9. For your efforts, you're rewarded with a Protect ring, which you probably don't need this late in the game. This secret was never published in any official walkthroughs or hinted at in-game. It only appeared as a footnote in the Final Fantasy IX Ultimania, a sort of comprehensive encyclopedia released only in Japan for every Final Fantasy game. Number 3. Recruiting Cloud, Final Fantasy Tactics. Square Enix's Final Fantasy Tactics has one of the original side quests nobody played, again owed to the convoluted process through which it must be accomplished, to unlock Final Fantasy VII protagonist Cloud Strife as a party member. Once you're roughly halfway through Chapter 4, go to Gaug and begin the quest to recruit Beowulf, one of the game's most powerful characters. Upon completing Beowulf's recruitment battles, you'll also unlock the Dragon Rays. Take Rays back to Gaug, where you'll recruit the robot Construct 8. Then you'll have to travel to Salgidos to buy a flower from Aerith, another Final Fantasy VII cameo. Now return to Gaug, then to Zeltania, where you'll unlock a new battle location. Complete the battle to receive the Zodiac Stone, which will turn Rays back into a human. Now back to, you guessed it, Gaug again, where you can use the stone to finally summon Cloud. Cloud starts at level 1 and requires a ton of grinding before he becomes useful. But even if you don't want to bother, you can still enjoy the bragging rights and all those other new characters you got along the way. Number 2. Ghosts of the Broken Father, Far Cry 6. Ubisoft's big worlds are so jammed with activities and so generous with information that exploring them can feel like checking off items on a list of errands. It's hard to miss anything in a Ubisoft game, and Far Cry 6 is no exception. But then again, there is the Ghost of the Broken Father. In the seemingly inconspicuous Santo Amaro Cemetery, there's a small mausoleum containing a newspaper article about the Ghost of the Broken Father. Reading it will trigger the ghost to appear, who will point you to a nearby grave containing a letter from his estranged wife, where where she talks about moving to Casa Dario. Upon reaching Casa Dario, you'll see a trail of blood leading to a well, where you'll find the ghost's written confession and the remains of the wife, over whom the ghost will break down sobbing. It's a brief tale of family tragedy, a son lost, a marriage broken, and a father living with eternal grief. Upon discovering his wife living happily, he kills her in a fit of jealousy and indignation over the fact that she found a way to move on, leaving his spirit to suffer in grief and regret. Number 1. The Secret People, The Outer Worlds. Fallout 3, Red Dead Redemption 2, and even The Witcher 3 all have cannibal content. It's one of the few cases in gaming where killing your enemies feels not only morally justified, but downright righteous. And Obsidian Entertainment's The Outer Worlds is no different. Side quests in The Outer Worlds aren't immediately obvious. There's no exclamation point above anyone's heads, so it's up to you to pursue your curiosity. Few quests demonstrate this better than The Secret People. To start, you need to speak to Velma, a seemingly random worker in a warehouse in Stellar Bay. Talking to her, she reveals that her co-worker, a delivery man named Braxton, hasn't shown up for work in a few days. Through a little light detective work on your part, you can track down Braxton's most recent delivery to the Mather residence. The startlingly large and food-obsessed family will invite you to join them for dinner. However, with a little exploring, you can find Braxton behind a locked door, or rather, you can find what's left of him. There are numerous possible outcomes to this quest, but it does reward you with the unique supper time weapon, a sword that you can swing continuously as opposed to the usual 3-hit combo. That's the end of our list, but let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other ideas for the best video game side quests that nobody played. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm @JessMcDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more great gaming lists.